Hey guys, what's going on? There's so much to talk about. There's always so much to talk about because the news happens so fast and I have little time to make a video. By the time I have time to make a video, there's so many topics. I could talk about how around in my area they are planning this new plan for speed limits. It will change depending on the hour. So some hours, some parts of the day it will be one speed limit, and then later in the day it'll switch. Which speeds will change, I don't know. How often it'll change, I don't know. Just seems like a way to trick people into not knowing what the speed limit is, just to steal more money for them. But that's kind of boring, and I already said everything. That's basically all I have to say about it. It's a stupid, ridiculous idea that's literally extortion. But we're going to talk about something else, something a bigger scale than just something happening in my state. We're going to talk about how Biden apparently wants to withdraw all troops from Afghanistan by September 11th, specifically. They chose September 11th, like as a symbol because that was exactly 20 years since 9/11 or whatever. They chose that specific day. I don't know. It makes no freaking sense. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. We're going to go over so many things about the war in Afghanistan, about how it was an abysmal failure, just to, go over the last 20 years of this failure of the United States, of multiple presidents. When something's ending, you might as well acknowledge it. Now, why do I say it was a failure? Well, because hundreds of thousands of people died and only benefited the 1%, the global elite, the people in charge of the U.S., didn't make the ordinary Americans any safer. Certainly didn't make the Afghan population any safer. Wasted a bunch of money on it, wasted a bunch of resources, soiled our reputation even further. I mean, the U.S. has been soiling its reputation for decades now. This wasn't the one thing that they did that soiled the reputation there's many, many things that beyond the scope of this video. But this was a major thing that soiled our reputation, that making the laughing stock of the world. Why? Because it was predicated on a lie. We made up lies against a nation that was doing nothing to us. Now, what I mean by that, what do you mean, Rob? Are you saying that Afghanistan didn't attack us in 9/11? Well, no, they didn't. The Taliban did not attack us in 9/11. Most Americans don't know there's a complete difference between Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. They are two completely different organizations from two completely different countries, and honestly, they don't really like each other. The Taliban didn't like that Al-Qaeda was in their country. They offered up to give us Osama bin Laden, and George Bush said no. So here's the lie. Al-Qaeda was like a group of 100 people in some cave. They pulled off this attack, which we're not going to go into whether we believe 9/11 was an inside job or not. Let's just go with the mainstream story that Al-Qaeda actually did this. Okay, there were about 100 or so people in a cave in Afghanistan. So why do we attack the entire country over it? That's like some radical terrorist group in the mountains of Idaho attacking France. No, not France, because we can't pick France as an example because they wouldn't do anything. Attack Russia, for example, killed a bunch of people in Russia, and Russia's like, we're going to invade the entire U.S. over this, and then everyone would be like, we didn't do jack shit, we don't even know these people, they're in the middle of fucking nowhere, why the fuck are you attacking us? And that's what happened. The Taliban's like, we'll give you Osama bin Laden, we don't like him, we'll give you his head. And they're like, no, we'll rather just invade the entire country. We made up this entire lie that the Taliban in Afghanistan, the country of Afghanistan, attacked us. And in the hurt and distress of 9/11, most Americans didn't know the difference and went along with it because they were just itching for revenge and they were hurt and scared or whatever. The 1% took advantage of this and made up lies to attack and occupy Afghanistan for the last 20 years. The loss of life is only the first stat in all of these abysmal failures of the war. We have 2,312 dead U.S. soldiers. Now, and also we have 1,720 civilian contractors. That could be non-combatant civilian contractors, like engineers or whatever, or it could be mercenary groups like Blackwater. Blackwater is considered a civilian contractor because they're not military, but they are combatants. They have killed civilians. So we have a total of 4,032 dead Americans there. We have 20,066 wounded. Some of these wounds are not that bad. Some of these wounds are debilitating. When someone loses their arm or leg in an IED blast, you're like, oh, well, they're not dead. So, I mean, only 2,312 soldiers died. Like, what's the big deal? No, but we're not talking about the 20,000 people, and lots of them have very severe injuries that are life debilitating. We're not also, in that number of 4,032 dead soldiers and civilian contractors, we're not also talking about all of the much bigger number, tens of thousands, if not more than 100,000, of U.S. military personnel who committed suicide shortly after or after serving in the Afghanistan war. If someone is wounded, has an IED blast to the head, and is depressed after being discharged and come back home, and whatever scenario you want to come up with, he takes his own life 8 years later, no, that's not a direct cause. He's not in the 2,312 dead American soldiers, but that still is a casualty from the war. There were so many soldiers, like I said, tens of thousands of soldiers. We can't attribute each reason why they killed themselves to the Afghanistan war, but many of them have stated that the things they did over there, killing civilians, propping up a regime that honestly is just as bad as the Taliban. We just picked someone that would fight against the Taliban. They realized they weren't fighting for our freedoms. They realized that they're being used by the 1%. They weren't fighting for our values the way how they thought they were. And tens of thousands of them committed suicide, many for that reason. These are untold numbers that we don't know exactly what the number is. We know it's great. There were 241,000 Afghan and Pakistanis died from this war. We know more than 100,000 of them were civilians. Again, the true number we will never know because the U.S. military continuously, in the government, continuously, habitually, psychopathically lies about covering up civilian deaths. This has been well established. WikiLeaks did this way back in 2006. It seems like a lifetime ago whenever I discovered WikiLeaks in high school. And that was like literally everything the mainstream media and the government is telling us about these wars is a fucking lie. We are massacring civilians by the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands if you want to include Iraq. I'm not even talking about Iraq, which is way worse. We're just talking about Afghanistan war because that one's supposedly drawing down to an end here, according to Biden. Everything's a fucking lie. We've spent more than $978 billion, so close to $1 trillion. Again, that's not even counting the war in Iraq. The war in Iraq is infinitely more expensive. We wasted close to $1 trillion on this war. And what do we have to show for this after all of these hundreds of thousands of dead innocents on both sides? Because everyone was used. The soldiers were used, the contractors were used, the civilians were just caught in the crossfire. The Taliban were just defending their own country from foreign invaders, the same thing they did against the British, same thing they did against the Russians. Ordinary Afghans took up arms against the Americans too. It wasn't just Taliban. It was every single Afghan who saw the government we were propping up, a horrible, corrupt, despotic regime that inflicted horrors on the civilians just the same as the Taliban. People don't realize how bad the Afghan government that we have been propping up has been. They're just as bad as the Taliban. They mutilate women. They sell little children as sex slaves. They're just as bad as the Taliban. They're just as backwards as they are. They're just a different group that we chose to prop up. So what do we have to show for this? Is Afghanistan any better in 2021 than it was in 2000 before we invaded? Are we any more safe than we were in 2000? But we've given way more people a reason to attack us, to hate us, because we inflicted so much destruction across the world. For every quote-unquote terrorist we kill, 4 more spout up because that was their friend, their family, whatever, opening us up to more attack. All of these conflicts that the U.S. keeps on getting itself into, just opening itself up to more attacks. If there's a bully just running around like a crazed madman, constantly punching people for no reason, eventually someone will get mad and punch them back, and then they will be justified. We're in dozens and dozens of wars, killing hundreds of thousands of people every single year. Our body stack is in the millions and millions, and none of it is for defense. None of it is to defend our people or our freedoms. It's all for the 1%. The 1% want us to invade Afghanistan because they have trillions upon trillions of dollars in mineral wealth. They don't have technology to mine, but we do. So we made up a lie against the Taliban in Afghanistan. We invaded them over this lie. We massacre their civilians by the tens of thousands. We prop up a horrible, corrupt, despotic regime that's just as bad as the Taliban when it comes to human rights record and their corruption and their suffering they inflicted on those civilians. And then we use this as a cover for all these companies to come in and mine all this wealth and steal it from the Afghans, so then we can use it for whatever. This valuable minerals we use to build things, to make cell phones, to whatever. And then after 20 years, like, okay, sorry, we just fucked up your country for decades. You know, people, their whole lives have been under this hellhole. Yeah, we're just going to leave by. The Taliban can still operate in the majority of the country. Throughout this entire war, we have never worn down the Taliban enough that they cannot operate in the vast majority of the country. They don't control most of the territory, but they have enough power, enough support from the civilians to operate and conduct attacks within it. As soon as we leave, which I'm going to get to, as soon as we leave, they're just going to take it over. So we wasted 20 years for nothing. The country is still going to go back under Taliban rule as soon as we leave. So for 20 years, we wasted all these lives, all this money, sold a reputation, and the end result in 2022 is going to be exactly the same in 2000. Taliban are going to be in control, and they're going to make Afghanistan a living hellhole for the population. Now, I really don't think that Biden is we're even going to withdraw from Afghanistan. It doesn't suit our interests. We still want to be there to harvest those minerals and for strategic control against China and Russia. It wouldn't make any sense to pull back now. What I think will happen is that he will make a convenient excuse as to, oh, this horrible thing happened, this thing regressed, the Taliban did this, whatever. So we actually can't withdraw in September of 2020. We have to stay there. That's why we're still in Korea 70 years later. That's why we're still in Germany and Japan 80 years, almost 80 years, I think it's 70 something, 80 years since World War II. What threat is there? There are no more Nazis to attack us in Germany. Why the fuck are we still there? Because it suits our global interests. It's not to protect our freedoms or to protect our people. We're going to be in Iraq forever. That keeps us a check on Iran. It helps us. It's very strategic next to Israel because we help Israel all the time with all their genocidal maniac. Keeps a check on Syria. Where do you think we launched when we invaded Syria? Where do you think we launched it from? Iraq neighbors it. So I don't think we're going to leave Afghanistan. I think he is dangling a carrot in front of us. Act like, oh, he's such a good president. He wants the war to end. He doesn't want any more violence. He has voted for every single fucking war that has come across the Senate floor. He's been a senator for 50 fucking years, and he supported every single war we've gotten in. All right, I know that wasn't my best video. I've been kind of distracted. Got a lot of things going on, but I just figured I'd make a video to summarize the horrible failure that is the war in Afghanistan on the supposed eve of its ending, and how our foreign policy and our war making is disastrous. Oh, here's another point I forgot to make up, of why you shouldn't trust the experts. They have been quote-unquote foreign policy experts that have been in their field for literally decades, longer than I've been alive, who've been in charge of esteemed institutions such as like the Brookings Institute or Cato. They have been executives in these big, giant, multi-billion-dollar corporations such as Raytheon and Boeing and Northrop Grumman, established, dignified people who are seemingly experts in their field of foreign policy and war making. Every single one of them supported the war in Afghanistan. They are all objectively fucking retarded. They have no idea about foreign policy. Foreign policy is my thing. That's what I majored in. Okay, so I'm a complete and utter nerd about this stuff. And in college, we learned about the abject failures of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Surprisingly, in a liberal institution, way back when liberal institutions weren't as crazy, they were still left-leaning, but they weren't that crazy. We learned about all of this stuff, about how objectively it was a horrible move for the United States to do this. And yet, seemingly all of these experts, told Bush, yep, you should do this, told Obama, yep, you should do this, told Trump, yep, you should do this, and told Biden, yep, you should do this. They're all retarded. They all don't give a shit about foreign policy. All they care about is making money for their 1%. That's why I say don't listen to the experts. They are experts in their field who don't know jack fucking shit about their field. They are literally fucking retards, bumbling around with the IQ of room temperature. They are in control of vast, powerful institutions that control many aspects of our lives, and they have no idea what the fuck they're doing. So I guess that's about sums it up.